I can feel it, a certainty in my gut. Mia, the girl I grew up with, the girl who was supposed to be my future, is slipping away. She's my next-door neighbor, my other half since we were kids. Her family has 2 daughters. Chloe, the older one, is 3 years ahead of us. And then there's Mia, who is the same age. My parents and hers aren't just neighbors. They're colleagues at the same firm. They've been best friends for what feels like a lifetime. So naturally, Chloe, Mia, and I were inseparable. We ate together and walked to school together. Every memory I have, they're in it. That is until Chloe left for college on the East Coast. The hazy, half-formed crush I had on her dissolved into just a quiet sense of longing. When it was just Mia and me left, things changed. We were 16, that awkward, emotionally charged age when everything feels super intense. I fell for her hard. Maybe it was the lifetime of shared history, or the fact that she was genuinely beautiful, or maybe she just clicked with everything I found attractive. Whatever it was, she was the only one I saw. From the start of junior year, all I wanted was for her to be my girlfriend. But Mia was a strange mix of romantic and pragmatic. She'd hint that she felt the same way, but always followed it up with, "We're too young. We can't get serious yet." I remember one ridiculously sunny afternoon. I was driving her to the library in my beat-up old sedan. We found a table right under an air conditioning vent, and the cool air blew strands of her hair across her face. She looked so peaceful, so perfect that I just stared, on an impulse I still don't understand. The words I've been holding back just tumbled out. "Mia, will you be my girlfriend?" The second I said it, I was flooded with regret. I glanced around, terrified someone had heard, but thankfully we were in a secluded corner. I cautiously looked back at Mia. She was just staring at me, her eyes wide with shock. My heart was hammering against my ribs, and I couldn't say another word. I just waited for a verdict. "We're still so young," she said. Her first words hit me like a bucket of ice water. She's going to say no. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I ducked my head, already trying to figure out how to play it off as a joke. But she started, and I looked up. "If you asked me again after graduation on the 50-yard line in front of the whole school, I might just say yes." Before I could process it, she stuck her tongue out playfully, a bright, beautiful smile spreading across her face. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, catching the blush on her cheek and lighting up the tips of her ears, which had turned a deep shade of red. A wave of pure joy washed over me. I shot from my chair. If I hadn't been in a dead silent library, I probably would have screamed, "Deal!" I managed to say, my voice full of an emotion I couldn't contain. "I'll give you the most epic proposal this school has ever seen." We were 17, the age where you think love is some kind of perfect, unbreakable fairy tale. From that day on, Mia and I had this unspoken understanding. We drove to school together. We came home together. We shared milk teas. We did our homework side by side. Our bond felt deeper, more real than ever. I was convinced that with our shared history and this being our first real love, we'd be holding hands until the end of time. But in the second half of senior year, that perfect picture started to get smudged. It started with a sophomore named Josh. He saw Mia once and was instantly infatuated. He knew I was in the picture, so he couldn't be direct. Instead, he engineered chance encounters. He'd be there on our route to school. He just happened to be by our classroom during passing periods. He'd bump into us on the way home. These calculated moments, sprinkled with small gifts and constant compliments, started to wear Mia down. She'd always been a sucker for big romantic gestures. It's why she wanted me to ask her out in front of everyone. I'll admit, I'm not the smoothest talker. I couldn't flatter her the way Josh did. I didn't have the shameless persistence he used to chase after girls. But my biggest strength is knowing when to cut my losses. I knew Mia better than anyone. The moment I saw her starting to waver, I began to pull my own feelings back, redirecting all that energy into studying. If you ever feel insecure next to the person you like, you need to work on yourself, not spiral. Spiraling just makes them lose respect for you. Self-improvement is the only way to close the distance. That was something my dad always told me. Maybe he'd seen all along that Mia wasn't the type to settle down easily. Soon, Mia started letting Josh join us for lunch. She'd still sit next to me, But her conversation, her laughter was all directed at him. Watching her light up while talking to him went from a stab in the heart to a dull, familiar ache. It's not that I didn't say anything. I told her she was getting too close to him, but Mia would just wave it off. He's just a sophomore, Leo. I'm not going to fall for him. Her words left me speechless. You won't fall for him, but the way you look at him says you already have. My heart would ache, but I'd force it back to a state of calm. If this pure thing we had was already tainted, then it was time to let it go. What is meant to be yours will never be yours. Letting go is the best way to start over. I shut out all the noise and threw myself into preparing for the SATs and college applications. My conversations with Mia became shorter and less frequent. She didn't even seem to notice. Even though we sat next to each other in class, she spent every spare moment running out to the hallway to talk to Josh, leaving me alone at my desk, grinding through practice tests. Mia and her sister Chloe were similar in one way. They were both naturally smart. Mia could cruise through classes with me and still beat me by a solid margin on every test. If I wanted to get into Northgate University, where Chloe was, I'd have to work twice as hard. Stacks of practice exams and dozens of empty pens were a testament to my effort. I was thinking about calculus problems while I ate dinner. Mia pointed it out once or twice, then gave up and focused her attention on Josh. At night after dinner, I'd sit at my desk buried in books. Sometimes when I was tired, I'd look up at the window next door, Mia's room. She used to sit at her desk, facing her window. Whenever I'd look up, she'd somehow sense it and look up too. She'd give me a sweet smile or make a goofy face, and it would make my whole night, motivating me to study even harder. But now her chair was empty. She was probably on her phone, texting Josh. Even though I decided to move on, there was a sour knot in my stomach. I'd shake my head, trying to clear the feeling and focus on my parents, on how hard they'd worked for all these years. No matter how exhausted they were from their jobs, they always came home, made dinner, and had a hot meal on the table waiting for me. Whenever I tried to help with the dishes, my mom would gently push me back toward my room, telling me my only job was to study. To give me an extra edge, my dad spent a fortune on an online tutor, someone to help me with my weakest subjects. I overheard them talking about it one night when I went to the bathroom. The course was only for a few weeks, but it cost him 2 months' salary, all just to help me get a slightly higher score. After that, I went back to my desk, focused on the problems in front of me, and didn't look out the window again. As application deadlines got closer, Mia complained from the passenger seat that I've been acting weird lately. I just said it's crunch time. I don't have the energy for anything else. She scoffed. You're not seriously still trying for Northgate, are you, Leo? My sister is way smarter than me, and she barely got in. Just let it go. We should be aiming for state school. That was what she said to me. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the look in her eyes. It was pity bordering on contempt. In that moment, she was looking down on me. It was just a goal, I said flatly, refusing to argue. My practice scores were still about 200 points shy of Northgate's average. She was right. It was a long shot. Mia seemed to realize she'd overstepped, and she started to say something to backtrack, but just then Josh pulled up alongside us on his bike. Her attention immediately shifted the rest of the way. She laughed and joked with him out the window. I just drove in silence. She was sitting in my car, but she was with another guy. When Josh even had the nerve to ask if she wanted a ride on the back of his bike, she actually hesitated for a second before saying no. The final week before applications were due, Josh came to find Mia after school. Mia, he said, using that overly familiar tone, you'll be gone at college soon. Can I at least be the one to take you to and from school for this last week? Mia had once told me that no guy besides me or her dad would ever be allowed to call her by her full first name like that. But she didn't even seem to notice. She just glanced at me, a look of conflict on her face. It's fine, I said, not looking up from my book. You go with him. It'll save me some gas and give me more time to study. She hesitated for another moment, then agreed. For that whole week, she rode on the back of Josh's bike. I started leaving for school a few minutes earlier each day, deliberately avoiding them. The first morning, Mia stormed into class and glared at me. I just glanced at her once before turning back to my work. We barely spoke that week. At lunch, she sat with Josh. My friends kept asking me what was going on, and I just brushed it off, saying Mia and I were just neighbors. With my mind clear of distractions, I focused completely on my applications. When the deadline finally arrived, my parents checked and rechecked my backpack for my laptop and login info. My heart filled with nothing but gratitude for them. You can do this, I told myself, walking into the computer lab. I felt surprisingly calm as I filled out the forms and attached my essays. I actually enjoyed the feeling of finality. After 3 intense hours of submitting applications, my parents didn't ask if it was hard. They just pulled me into a huge hug and started talking about where we should go for a celebratory trip. I just smiled and said I wanted to sleep and then relax for a few days. My dad clapped me on the shoulder, and my mom hurried me into the car. Back home, I crashed and slept until I woke up naturally, feeling completely refreshed. The tension of the last year had finally lifted. I just laid in bed, stretching with no desire to get up. I finally rolled out of bed around noon when I heard voices in the living room. Mia's parents were over-planning a joint family vacation with my mom and dad. When they saw me, they lit up, asking why I hadn't been over to see Mia lately. I just smiled and said studying was more important, but now that applications were in, I'd have more time. Mia's mom, her eyes crinkling into a smile, pulled me down to sit next to her. She asked where I wanted to go, and I thought for a second and said, maybe a trip to see the national parks out west like Yosemite. Her smile got even bigger. She exchanged a look with her husband and said Mia had suggested the exact same thing. So it was decided both families would go to Yosemite for a week. Chloe would be home in a couple of days, and we could all go together. It had been a long time since we'd all done something as a group. 2 days later, Chloe was back, as gentle and warm as ever. The first thing she did was hand me a small box. Inside was a limited edition action figure I'd been wanting for ages. I carefully set it down, and in a burst of excitement, I gave her a quick, tight hug. I realized what I'd done and immediately let go just in time to see Mia watching us with a sour expression. "It's okay, Leo," Chloe said with a soft laugh. "It's not like you haven't hugged me before." Her words made me blush. Looking at her fair, pretty face, my heart did a little flip. When we set off, both families in their respective cars, Mia didn't come over to ride with me like she always used to. My mom, noticing our car only had 3 people, jokingly called out asking if one of them wanted to join us to liven things up. To my surprise, Chloe started walking over. Seeing that, Mia jumped out of her car and ran to ours too. So I ended up sitting in the back, sandwiched between the 2 sisters. The atmosphere, however, was anything but harmonious. I found myself constantly turning toward Chloe, asking her about college life. She answered everything with a gentle warmth, sharing funny stories and interesting details. We talked and laughed easily, and the complete lack of awkwardness between us seemed to irritate Mia, but no one was paying attention to her. I was completely absorbed in my conversation with Chloe. The big sister, who had always looked out for me, was still the same person I remembered. The months apart hadn't created any distance at all. The trip was a blast for everyone except for Mia, who seemed to be in a perpetually bad mood. Her mom scolded her a few times over the 7 days, but it didn't make a difference. The only time her expression changed was when her phone buzzed, and she'd retreat into a corner, smiling and texting for hours. Chloe watched her thoughtfully for a long time. Then her gaze shifted strangely to me, but I was too busy taking in the majestic views of the valley to notice. The week flew by. On the drive home, I was grinning like an idiot at a picture on my phone. It was a photo of Chloe and me on a boat on one of the lakes. I was excitedly pointing at something in the distance, and she was looking at me with a soft, gentle smile. The affection in her eyes was captivating. The picture just radiated this effortless intimacy. There were plenty of photos from the trip with her parents, but only a few with Chloe and only one with Mia, a candid shot her mom had taken. In it, Mia looked distant, her attention glued to her phone. I was turned toward Chloe, and though we were only a foot apart, we might as well have been in different worlds. When Mia saw that photo later, she froze. She looked at me with a flicker of guilt, but I was too busy admiring the pictures on my phone to care. After that, Mia started coming over all the time. She'd hang out at my house or invite me over for dinner. I didn't refuse, but I kept a careful, polite distance. I'd go to dinner. I'd be civil when she came over, but the easy intimacy we once had was gone. We were just friends. Mia's mood soured, though she tried her best to act cheerful around me. This went on for a few days. On the morning we had to go to the school to officially accept our college offers, Mia was waiting for me at my door, a conflicted look on her face. "Let's go," I said, ignoring her expression and patting the passenger seat of my car. "Leo, are you going to keep your promise?" The sun was bright and a light breeze was blowing. Halfway to school, Mia suddenly wrapped her arms around my waist from the passenger seat, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't place. She was holding on so tight, it was actually making it hard to drive. I told her to let go, but she wouldn't. So I pulled the car over to the side of the road. "We made a deal. You can't go back on your word." Her eyes were red-rimmed, and the wind had messed up her hair, giving her a look of fragile beauty. I looked at this girl I'd known my entire life. For a fleeting moment, I felt an impulse to give in, to be reckless one more time. I didn't want to lose her. She was my entire youth. "Okay," I finally said, my voice low after a long internal battle. When her expression shifted to one of pleading, I decided to give her one last chance. If she agreed to be my girlfriend and promised to keep her distance from other guys, maybe we could make it work. When we got to the school gym, my guidance counselor saw me and immediately pulled me aside, talking excitedly. Mia's phone rang, and since it was after graduation, no one cared. She glanced at the screen, said she had to use the restroom, and hurried off. My counselor was gushing about my final SAT scores, announcing them proudly to everyone in earshot. My classmates stared at me in shock. I had jumped over 200 points from my last practice test. Getting into Northgate was no longer a long shot. It was a sure thing. I submitted my acceptance, but Mia still hadn't come back. I pulled out my phone and called her. It rang several times before she picked up. The background was noisy. She said she was on the football field and would be right back, then hung up. With nothing else to do, I took her acceptance form and went to find her. As I got to the field, I saw a large crowd gathered in the middle. Mia was standing in the center of it all, the focus of everyone's attention. Josh was in front of her, holding a huge bouquet of flowers, saying something to her. It was obviously a public confession. Mia was biting her lip, looking torn, and hadn't given him an answer. I thought about it for a second, then reached into my pocket. It was a gift I'd bought a long time ago, a delicate silver necklace. It wasn't expensive, but Mia had pointed it out once, saying how much she loved it but couldn't afford it with her allowance. Back then, when she was my whole world, I had filed that information away. It was time to make good on my promise. The choice was hers. "Mia, I really like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" I strode forward, walking right past Josh as if he didn't exist, and held the open box out to her. Josh's face darkened. We saw the flicker of delight in Mia's eyes. He panicked. He whispered something to her that I couldn't hear. But whatever it was, Mia's expression changed. Her eyes darted to a girl standing nearby, and then she reached out and took the flowers from Josh. She didn't say a word, but the message was clear. I let out a dry, self-deprecating laugh. "Well, Mia, I kept my promise." I tossed the necklace box onto the grass, shoved her acceptance form into her hand, and turned and walked away without looking back. I could feel the eyes of the other students on me, pity, disdain, and contempt. I felt nothing. I had honored my word. She had thrown away her last chance. From now on, we're just neighbors for someone like me who valued emotional loyalty above all else. I'd already bent my own rules for her. This just erased whatever was left. Mia didn't follow me. I didn't go back to the gym. My business there was done. I just got in my car and drove home. "Leo, why did some other boy drop me off?" "Were you being difficult again?" my mom asked, clearly displeased that I hadn't brought her home. I explained that Mia had something to take care of, so I came back first. My mom gave me a thoughtful look, sighed softly, and let it go. It wasn't long before Mia showed up in my room, looking at me cautiously. Leo, Josh's sister, was there. I was afraid he'd be embarrassed, so that's the only reason I did it. Don't be mad. I almost laughed at the explanation. I turned and studied her face. She couldn't meet my eyes, but then she moved closer, grabbing my arm and starting to whine playfully. Oh, come on, Leo. I know I messed up. It was just this once. I promise it'll never happen again. Okay, just ask me one more time. I'll say yes, I swear. Her soft, pleading voice just made my skin crawl. The thought that she probably used the same tone with Josh filled me with irritation. My expression must have been colder than I realized because she looked at me with disbelief. Just then, my mom came in and Mia didn't dare say anymore. My mom, seeing her, cheerfully invited her to stay for dinner. Mom, Mia has plans later. She can't stay, I said, cutting in before Mia could accept. The look on her face was pained, but in front of my mom, she could only force a smile, say a reluctant goodbye, and go home. Then my phone started blowing up with texts from her, long, rambling essays that I had no desire to read. They were all excuses about the situation, about our childhood bond, about how she was just trying to spare Josh's feelings. I replied with one sentence. Did you ever stop to think that maybe I would be embarrassed? Then I put my phone down and didn't read another message she sent. For the rest of the summer, I got a job at the mall a few towns over. It was a rotating shift, and the few times Mia came by, I was always at work. We didn't see each other once the entire summer. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't reply to her texts. The first time we finally saw each other was when I got my first real paycheck and took Chloe out to celebrate. Mia tagged along, looking a little nervous but excited. She kept trying to make conversation, and while I wasn't rude, my answers were short and non-committal. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she ignored it every time. With Chloe there, she couldn't bring up what had happened, but she kept shooting me guilty looks. Chloe, for her part, seemed oblivious to the tension, her eyes on the city traffic, occasionally reminding us to be careful. Then Mia's ringtone went off. She rejected the call twice. The third time, she glanced at me, saw I wasn't paying attention, and answered in a hushed, annoyed tone. I don't know what the person on the other end said, but Mia's face fell. She hung up, looking conflicted, and then flagged down a cab. A friend of mine just got into town. I have to go meet them, she said hurriedly, and left, leaving Chloe and me standing there. Chloe didn't seem bothered by her sister's abrupt departure. Instead, she casually took my hand. There's too much traffic here. I'll feel better holding on. It felt like it was 6 or 7 years ago when Chloe, who had hit her growth spurt early, would hold my hand on the way home from school. Back then, it felt safe. Now it made my heart race. Her hand was so soft in mine, a gesture of easy intimacy that was so different from anything I'd shared with Mia. I had booked a private room at a nice restaurant near the mall and ordered all of her favorite dishes. After we ate, I paid the bill without a second thought. This place is way too expensive, Chloe said, frowning at the receipt. Don't come here again. If you want to eat this stuff, I can make it for you at home. It's fine, I said with a huge grin. The whole point of getting a summer job was so I could treat you to a nice dinner. This meal meant something different. It was the first time I had ever treated Chloe with money I had earned myself. We walked through the mall afterward, and Chloe stopped at one of the counters. After looking for a while, she bought a watch. When I saw the price tag, over $1,000, my jaw dropped. This is an investment. It'll last for years. Not like spending a fortune on a single meal, she said with a playful smirk, rolling her eyes in a way that was still ridiculously charming. I was momentarily stunned. A light blush colored her cheeks, but she ignored it, carefully fastening the watch on my wrist before paying for it with a satisfied smile. On our way out, we saw Mia. She was holding hands with Josh, and they were talking to another girl who I immediately recognized as Josh's sister. Chloe looked at them, then turned and looked at me. I felt nothing, but Chloe's brow furrowed. Mia, she called out, walking straight toward them. When Mia saw us, her face went white. She immediately dropped Josh's hand and rushed over, as if terrified we would talk to them. Josh, whose arm was in a sling, scowled at us. My friend had to leave, and I was on my way to find you guys when I ran into them. So I stopped to talk for a minute. Mia explained a little too quickly and then tried to pull us away. I instinctively pulled my arm back. A hurt look flashed across her face. Josh's sister came over, said a quick hello, and then hurried away with her brother. Mia tried to get us to go shopping, but both Chloe and I said we were tired, so she had no choice but to head home with us. As we parted ways, Mia gestured to her phone, signaling for me to check my messages. I ignored her. As the start of the semester approached, I went over to the Fong's house, suitcase in tow. You too? Mia stammered, staring at me, and Chloe standing there with our luggage. I just smiled and held up my Northgate University acceptance letter. Time to head to campus. Chloe and I were traveling together. The sight of the letter made Mia's face drain of all color. Her expression went from shock to devastation, and then tears started to well up in her eyes. Leo, you promised we'd go to the same college. Sorry, I never said that. That day when I said if you asked me in front of the whole school, I'd say yes, and then we'd go to college together. Did you forget? I said, taking a finger off. You rejected my proposal. Second, I said we'd go to college, not the same college. Since she was airing our private promises out in the open where our parents could hear, I had no problem being direct. Luckily, her parents weren't in the room. No, Leo, you can't do this. If you leave, what about me? Are you saying you want to do a long-distance relationship for 4 years? For the first time, I was genuinely baffled by her logic. You rejected me. We're not even together. What long-distance relationship? You turned me down. What are you talking about? I grabbed my suitcase and Chloe's and started for the door, but Mia grabbed my arm, holding on tight. You're joking, right? You're just taking your sister to the airport. There's no way your grades were good enough for Northgate. She seemed to be desperately searching for an excuse, staring at me, willing it all to be a joke. Outside, my dad pulled up in our car and honked, telling us to hurry. I've never lied to you, I said, and pulled my suitcase out the door. I didn't give Mia another glance as I loaded the car. Chloe patted her sister's shoulder, sighed, and got in the car with me. Mia seemed unable to process what was happening. She just stood there on her porch, watching us until the car disappeared from sight. It was the peak of move-in season, so traffic was heavy. My phone started buzzing nonstop. I didn't need to look to know it was Mia, because she'd been so distracted before the exams. Her dream of Northgate had slipped away. She ended up at the local state university. Years apart would probably give her time to understand our relationship. As for me, I was just excited to finally be going to college. Even the traffic couldn't dampen my spirits. My dad saw us off at the train station, telling me to study hard and to look after Chloe. I promised I would. And then, seeing the slight stoop in his shoulders, I pulled him into a hug. Don't worry, Dad. I'm grown up now. I can take care of myself. You and Mom, just take care of yourselves at home. As the train slowly pulled away, my dad stood on the platform, waving, and a lump formed in my throat. After a long journey, Chloe and I finally stepped onto the Northgate campus. She expertly guided me through registration and helped me get settled in my dorm. She even made my bed for me. My new roommates looked on with a mixture of envy and admiration, giving me a thumbs up and whispering about how my girlfriend was so thoughtful and beautiful. I didn't bother correcting them. A part of me was thrilled. Afterward, I helped Chloe move into her dorm, hauling her heavy suitcase up 5 flights of stairs. She pulled out a tissue and gently wiped the sweat from my forehead. Just then, her roommates arrived and stared at our easy intimacy. They pulled Chloe aside, grilling her about our relationship. I don't know what she said, but they kept sizing me up. As Chloe unpacked, her other 2 roommates showed up, and the 3 of them immediately started teasing her, insisting she had to treat them to dinner. Without a second thought, she agreed. And that's how I ended up having dinner with 4 girls from the senior dorm. From then on, Chloe and I fell into a routine. We'd eat together at the dining hall and take walks around campus in the evenings. The rumor that we were a couple spread like wildfire. I found out when a friend saw us walking together and started teasing me. I was about to explain, but Chloe just looped her arm through mine. That settled that. My friend just grinned, made a couple more jokes, and then wisely made himself scarce. Chloe's face was a little flushed. She explained that a few guys had been relentlessly hitting on her, and she was hoping I could act as a shield to get them to back off. Well, if I'm your shield, I'll never be able to get a girlfriend, I joked. Maybe you should just be my girlfriend for real, Chloe. She stared at me for a long moment, and then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, okay. I stopped walking, looking at her in disbelief. "Don't forget I grew up with you, too," she said bravely, meeting my gaze, her gentle eyes full of conviction. "Doesn't that make us childhood sweethearts, too? Why can't I like you?" "I just can't believe it," I stammered. "Chloe, you're so beautiful and smart. Why would you like me?" Chloe was objectively even prettier than her sister. She had a better figure and a much calmer temperament. She was always the one who gave in, who looked out for Mia and me. "Leo, you're great, too. You're tall and handsome, and you got into Northgate, same as me. Your grades are just as good as mine." She rushed to list my good qualities, not letting me put myself down. I was so touched that I just pulled her into a hug, an act that felt completely natural after a lifetime of doing it. "Thank you for liking me, Chloe." And just like that, with no grand gestures or dramatic confessions, Chloe and I were officially together. We just hadn't told our families yet. A couple of months later, Chloe started an internship. To avoid being far from me, she found a company near campus. At first, she commuted from her dorm, but the company often had her working late. To make things easier, she decided to rent an apartment. I was all for it, knowing that living off campus would give us more freedom. Chloe bit her lip, and then she asked if I wanted to move in with her. Move in together. The thought consumed me. My mind filled with images of living with Chloe, sharing meals, waking up together. I immediately agreed. Seeing my goofy, enthusiastic reaction made her laugh. After looking at several places, we found a small 60-square-meter apartment, just big enough for the two of us. We each bought things we liked, little decorations to make the place feel like ours. Looking around the cozy space we'd created, I felt like I was in a dream. I'm living with Chloe. The reality of it didn't fully hit me until she came out of the bathroom after a shower. Her face flushed, and she shyly told me it was my turn. I practically sprinted into the bathroom. From that day on, we were like a married couple. She would try to get home early to cook for me, and I'd surprise her with little gifts. Because we knew each other so well, we never fought. We were just incredibly compatible. Sometimes I'd come home early and cook all her favorite foods, setting the table with a bouquet of flowers for when she got back from work. Other times, she'd surprise me with a jersey for my favorite team or a new action figure. Happy times fly. Before we knew it, it was time for winter break. After one last dinner in our apartment, we carefully closed the windows, turned off the water, and unplugged everything. We took one last lingering look around our little home and then walked out the door, hand in hand. Our happy new beginning would be on pause for a whole month. On the train ride home, I had her in my arms, feeling like we had a million things to say. My parents texted repeatedly asking when we'd arrive. I patiently replied each time. And just before we pulled into the station, I told Chloe I was going to tell her parents about us. This time, she hesitated. "What about my sister?" she asked. "What about her?" "There's nothing between us," I said. "Who cares what she thinks?" Chloe finally nodded, but asked me to let her be the one to announce it. When we exited the station, both sets of parents were there waiting. Mia's break didn't start until that afternoon, so she wasn't there. I sat in the back of my parents' car with my mom, who held my hand and looked me over, saying I'd gotten thinner and a little darker after half a year away. I laughed and flexed my arm, telling her that the freshman boot camp had made me leaner, not weaker. My parents laughed, happy to have me home. We drove straight to Mia's university to pick her up. She was just walking out as we arrived and ran over, looking thrilled to see us. I hadn't initiated contact with her once in the past 6 months. All the effort had been from her side. I told her once that we could only be friends, but she didn't listen. After that, I only replied selectively to her texts, ignoring anything that crossed the line. At the restaurant, our families gathered for dinner. Chloe and I sat together, but Mia insisted on squeezing in next to me. As she sat down, she saw our hands intertwined under the table. The color drained from her face. At one point, Mia's mom mentioned that Chloe would be graduating soon and that it was time she started thinking about finding a boyfriend. Chloe stood up, holding up our joined hands for her parents to see. "Leo and I are together," she announced simply. The statement stunned both sets of parents into silence. Then a moment later, they all broke into joyous laughter. My dad and her dad immediately raised their glasses. Looks like we're going to be family, her dad boomed. I watched Leo grow up. I couldn't ask for a better son-in-law. And Chloe is a wonderful girl, so sweet-natured, my dad returned. I'd be thrilled to have her as a daughter-in-law. The two of them began a round of mutual compliments, drinking happily and getting progressively drunker. Their talk quickly turned to engagement parties, wedding gifts, and how many kids we should have. The wedding gift will be generous. We love Chloe, and she deserves the best, my dad declared. I'll handle the engagement party. Don't you spend a dime. I only have 2 daughters. Everything I have will be theirs one day, her dad slurred back. Our mothers were just as delighted, huddled together and whispering, their eyes constantly flitting over to Chloe and me. Mia, however, didn't smile once. She sat there pale as a ghost, barely touching her food the entire evening. Later that night, the shouting started. Mia and Chloe were having their first ever real fight, and it was so loud we could hear it next door. When I knocked and went inside, I found Chloe, usually so gentle, standing her ground like a mother hen, arguing fiercely with her sister. Leo loves me. He asked me out. How could you steal him from me? Mia shrieked. So what if he asked you out? You didn't say yes. What's wrong with me being with him now? Chloe retorted. Hearing this, their mom looked at me with a complicated expression. I gave her an apologetic nod and walked over to Chloe, taking her hand. Mia, the only reason I asked you was because you told me to, I said, my voice steady. At that point, I wasn't expecting us to get together because I knew you were going to choose Josh. You rejected me. Why are you making a scene now? My words seemed to deflate her completely. I just wanted to, she stammered, trying to explain when all those people were laughing at me. I cut her off. You chose to stay there and let it happen. Did you ever think about how I felt? And after that, you and I both saw you with Josh. Was he forcing you to be there? Were you forced to meet his sister as his girlfriend? Have you even broken up with him yet? My string of questions left her paler than ever, unable to form a coherent defense. All she could do was tearfully insist that she was just pretending to be his girlfriend and that they were never really together. You know what you were really thinking? We've known each other our whole lives. Mia, I know exactly what was going through your head. If you had feelings for someone else, you should have just let me go. Mia had nothing left to say. That night, Chloe came home with me. It was her official introduction to my parents as my girlfriend. She ignored Mia for the rest of the break, and I spent all my time with her, not caring what Mia was doing. Just before we were scheduled to go back to school, Mia showed up at our door. Our parents were throwing us an engagement party the next day, and we were leaving the day after. What did you want, Al? Curious, Chloe and I followed her outside. Waiting there were Josh and his sister. He just asked me to pretend to be his girlfriend, Mia said, addressing us but looking at them. He said, you were watching Leo, and that he'd be humiliated if I said no. That's why I did it. Josh's sister looked shocked, glancing between her brother and Mia, clearly not expecting to be dragged into this. Mia, you spent all your time with me. You agreed to be my girlfriend, and now you're backing out? Josh said, frowning at me as if I were the one who had stolen his girlfriend. I didn't manage our friendship well, and for that, I'm sorry, Mia said, her voice firm. I've always seen you as just a younger friend. I've never had romantic feelings for you. Her bluntness made both Josh and his sister scowl. Just a friend. Josh shot back. You came to my classroom every day. You texted me constantly. That's why I got hurt. You drove 30 minutes to see me and told my sister you felt bad for not taking better care of me as your girlfriend. That was just as a friend. Mia's face went white. She didn't know how to respond and just kept stealing nervous glances at me. It's you? Josh suddenly yelled, pointing at me. You forced her to do this, didn't you? You were afraid I'd steal her from you. But we're the ones who are in love. You can't break us up. It has nothing to do with him. This was all my fault. Mia cried, jumping in front of me with her arms spread wide. Excuse me, I think you're confused, I said calmly, holding on my hand, which was clasped in Chloe's. On both of our fingers, engagement rings glittered in the sun. Chloe and I are getting engaged tomorrow. Your business is your own. Josh was struck dumb. His sister grabbed his arm, stopping him from saying anything else. I don't care what you were thinking, his sister said to Mia, her voice sharp but reasonable. You led my brother on, and now you're trying to walk away from it. You owe us an apology." Mia had no response. She could only hang her head and mumble apologies. Josh's sister dragged him away, clearly wanting nothing more to do with the situation. That evening, Chloe told me Josh's sister had called Mia and chewed her out for messing with her brother. The next day, our engagement party was a simple but happy affair with all our relatives gathered to celebrate with us. Afterward, Chloe pulled me aside. She was worried about Mia, who had been quiet and withdrawn all day. The confrontation yesterday had clearly hit her hard. Chloe and I wanted to find Josh's sister. We explained the whole history between Mia and me and how her brother had inserted himself into the middle of it. When she heard that her brother had knowingly pursued Mia, even though he knew about me, she was appalled. I told her the whole story, including how Chloe and I had gotten together. She sincerely apologized, saying her brother was responsible for breaking Mia and me up. I just shook my head, smiled, and left, holding Chloe's hand. I didn't realize Mia was standing right behind us until it was too late. She looked at us with a complex, devastated expression. "Can we talk?" she asked. I gently refused. "Mia, we grew up together. You know how I am. We can't go back. Besides," I said, looking at her sister, "I'm incredibly happy with Chloe." "I know," she whispered. That day, Mia followed us home in a daze. She didn't even come out to say goodbye when Chloe and I left for the airport. 3 years later, the day after my college graduation, Chloe and I got married. Mia was the maid of honor, and she gave us a heartfelt blessing. It was a huge, beautiful wedding. I watched Chloe, looking absolutely radiant, walk down the aisle. I took her hand from her father and promised to spend the rest of my life making her happy. I slipped a ring on her finger, pulled her close, and kissed her deeply. In the audience, Mia was crying her eyes out, her mother trying in vain to comfort her. After the wedding, we moved into our new house. Mia, showing no interest in dating, moved into the house next door. When our son was born, Mia was a constant presence. She helped with the baby and the housework. While it was a huge help, we worried it was preventing her from living her own life. Chloe tried to talk to her about finding a boyfriend and settling down, but Mia would just smile, shake her head, and continue cooing at our son, a look of pure joy on her face. Our jobs were local, and while Mia's salary wasn't high, her hours were flexible. Having her around saved us so much time and energy that eventually we stopped trying to persuade her otherwise. One Saturday night, Chloe and I came home from a much-needed date night. As we opened the door, we heard a conversation from the living room. "Say, Mama, sweetie. Can you say Mama? Mama." Chloe and I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at Mia, who was holding our son and beaming. We looked at each other, completely at a loss for